and welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And we are going to go back now to our text where we left off the last time. So here we are. Abimelech halach elav migrar. So we had in the previous sense, we had talked about how God had appeared to Isaac and how Isaac he had really given Isaac a blessing and gave him a lot of reassurance, and that Isaac in return had built an altar, called upon the name of Hashem, and pitched his tent, and his and the servants of Isaac dug there a well. Abimelech halach elav migrar. So Abimelech comes to him from Gerar. Achuzat mere'ehu. So this Hebrew here is, the syntax is very difficult, right? It could mean that one of his friends, right, or of his friends, because in this case, ro'eh can mean a friend, right? Was it called Achuzah, right? That the friend's name was Achuzah. Uficho, and again, Ficho could be a name. Sar Tzva'o, the captain of his host, the captain of his army, or the general of his army, however you want to put it. And Rashi is going to try and pull this apart and piece it together and see what we can make of it. So here we are, the Achuzat Mere'ehu. Let me see if I can make it just a little bit bigger. So he says, Ketargumo v'siat merachamohi. So the way the Targum, because that's certainly a place for us to go right off the bat. Here we go. Abimelech azal levate migerar. Abimelech went to him from Gerar. V'siat merachamohi. Merachamohi would mean his companions, and a si'ah would be a band of his companions. Ufichol rav and Fichol, the head of his army. So this is where Rashi goes to begin with, right? He says, we'll understand Achuzat Mere'ehu as the way the Targum is translated. Siat Me'ohavav. So Rashi gives us the Hebrew of that, right? A band of those of his companions, those who loved him, literally. Bereshit Rabbah. So he's basing this, he says, on Bereshit Rabbah. Ve'yesh putrin mere'ehu. And there are those who explain mere'ehu, this word mere'ehu, mem miyasud hateva, because mem can be the partitive article, some of his, of me, something. So it can be a pronominal prefix, or it can be part of the root. And that's what he's saying. Miyasud hateva, meaning me re'ehu, would be part of the root of the word. And he gives an example in Judges 14, Shloshim Meri'im to Shimshon. So exactly, I'm trying to think of, Lauren, I could use your help here if you have a translation here.
It says the 30 companions of Samson.
No. Okay, all right. So that they weren't of his companions, they weren't some of his companions, they were all his companions. This is how I'm understanding the Rashi here anyway. I mean, when he's saying mim miyasod, yasod hateva means the foundation of the word, right? Kedei shetihiyeh tevat va'achuzat, right? So that the word va'achuzat, dvuka. So we can say achuzat is in the construct state, right? So let's take a look at the sentence here. Right. So here it is, achuzat mere'ehu. So achuzat would be something, le'echoz means to gather together, to hold together, something like that, right? A gathering this would be a gathering of achuzat, because at is a construct state suffix. Mere'ehu his friends. And the Av would be achuzat, of his friends. And the Mem would not be Av there. Okay. Aval ein derech eretz ledaber, but Rashi has some discomfort with this. He says it isn't the custom. Okay, it's not considered derech eretz. It's not considered to be honorable, respectful. Ledaber al malchut kain, to speak regarding the monarchy in this way. Siat ohavav, right? A group of his friends. She'im kain, because if this is the case, kol siat ohavav holich imo, we would say that the entire group of his friends went along with him. Right? He took along with him, that he took all his friends with him. V'lo hayalo ela siat achat shel ohavim, and that in fact he only had one little group. Right? It doesn't say little here; it just says one band of friends. Lachen, and for this reason, yesh lefotro gilshon harishon, and for this reason, the way it was explained at the beginning of this, where the mem indicates the particle article, is in fact a better way of explaining it. The al titma al tav shel achuzat, and he says, don't be alarmed because the end of achuz, that taf, this final taf, which I told you represents a smichut, represents a construct state, shel achuzat, this taf of achuzat. The afal pi she'enot teva smucha, and even though it does not represent a smichut, it does not represent the construct state. Yesh dugmata b'mikra. There are other examples of this in scripture. Is rat mitzar, right? A helper from the oppressor, something like that. Aid from the oppressor. And instead of saying azara, it says israt. And israt or azarat might be considered construct, but it isn't. And then he says in Isaiah 51, Veshikurat velo miyayin, right? So again, it's got this taf at the end of the word, and it simply means and drunk velo miyayin, but not from wine. Achuzat lashon kvutza va'aguda. He says the word achuzat has the meaning of kvutza, right? A community or a group of people, va'aguda, a band, shene'echazin yachad, that are tied together, that are tied together. So we see Rashi looking carefully at the Hebrew here and trying to analyze it. But interestingly enough, it's a question not actually of the translation itself, because basically if you go either way, it basically means the same thing. Although Rashi is suggesting that if you understand it in the second way, it implies that's all the friends he had. Whereas in the first, the Me're'ehu, because it's the article means some of his friends. Okay. So a little bit of analysis there. Vayomer alehem Yitzchak, and Isaac said to them, Madua batem elai, why have you come to me? Why are you coming here to me? Va'atem sneitem oti, and you've hated me. You hate me. V'tishalchuni meichem, and you sent me away from you. So why are you coming to me now? Vayomru, and they said, Ra'o ra'inu, we have indeed seen, Ki haya Hashem imach, that the Lord is with you. Vanomer tehina Allah beinotenu. And so we said, let there be, and Allah is a curse, literally, but it has to do with an oath, right? Or can I say maybe a precautionary oath, if I can use that expression, between us, beinotenu, beinenu uveinecha, between us and between you, v'nichrata brit imach. And we've had this expression before, and we establish a covenant, right? A solemn agreement with you. So they're explaining why they did see this. So Rashi, ra'o ra'inu. So you see the doubling up. We have seen, right? Ra'u be'avicha, they saw with regard to your father. V'ra'inu bach. So ra'or, he said, that's what Rashi's saying, is that the ra'or refers to Abraham, your father. Ra'inu bach, and we see with you. So that's the ra'or ra'inu, that we see that it isn't just your father, it's also with you too. Tehina Allah benotena. So as I said, let there be this precautionary oath between us. Ha'Allah, this is to say that this curse which is between benotenu, mime avicha, was also from the days of your father. Tenhi gam ata beinenu veinecha, and let that oath also apply between us, between gam ata, even now, between us and between you. So you may remember, of course, or maybe not, we probably didn't necessarily get to this part of the Parsha when we were reading about Abraham, and that he also had an encounter with Sarah and Abimelech, that right before the birth of Isaac. And there was this agreement between him and Abimelech, and basically we had a very similar story, as you know, with Isaac and Rebekah and Abimelech, and we're saying this should all be connected. We should repeat that solemn agreement. What is the solemn agreement? What's the precaution? Im ta'aseh imanu ra'ah, if you should act in an evil way against you, you should do any evil, perform any evil against us. Ka'asher lo naga'anucha, inasmuch as we have not touched you, literally. In other words, that they haven't done, that the Philistines haven't, in fact, initiated anything to cause Isaac to do that. So, v'ka'asher asinu imach, and just as we did with you, rak tov, we only did tov with you, we only did good with you, v'nishalechacha b'shalom, and we sent you off in peace, right, with peace. Ata, you now, Baruch Hashem, are blessed of Hashem. It is interesting. Because here they had reacted. Clearly, the Torah is telling us that they had reacted in a way where Isaac was very suspicious of them and did not feel that they had treated him anything short of with enmity. And they're saying, basically, it sounds to me like they're saying, well, we didn't take any captives, we didn't strike you, we didn't actually cause you harm. All we did was we sent you away to prevent this jealousy. Remember what caused this whole situation? We just tried to deal with it in a peaceful kind of way, and so you shouldn't hold this against us. And in fact, we should have this solemn agreement that we that we are not going to hurt one another. It does have a little tinge of irony, I think, because I don't think they were really very, very nice to him. But here we go. Lo naganucha, here's the Rashi. We did not touch you, right? We didn't injure you. Kish amarnu lech me'imanu. When we said lech lecha me'imanu, when we told you, get going from us. Ata, you, gam ata, and even you. Svarim acherim, other texts say ata, meaning now, with an ayin. You notice this is an ayin, and this is an aleph. So ata with an ayin means now. Haseh lanu kamochen. You should also act in a similar kind of way. Onwards. Vayas lahem mishteh. So how did Isaac react? He accepted what they were proposing. wasn't holding grudges here, and in fact, he made a feast for them. And they ate and they drank. Vayashkimu baboker, they got up early the next day. Vayishavu ish, the achiv, that is the word achiv here, and each man swore to his brother. Vayishalchem Yitzchak, and Isaac sent them off. Vayelchu me'ito b'shalom, and they left him with peace, in peace. Vahi bayomahu, and it was on that day, Vayavu avdei Yitzchak, the servants of Isaac came, Vayagidu lo, and they told him, Alodot habe'er asher chafaru, regarding the well which they had dug, Vayumrulu matzanu mayim. And they told him, we have in fact found water. We've discovered water. So this could be the fifth well that was mentioned in our commentary yesterday. Vayikra ota shiva, and he called it shiva, 7, right? Or shlishba, or a oath, right? A promise. Al kain shem ha'ir, and for this reason, the name of the city is Be'er Sheva, the well of an oath, right? Something like that. Ad hayom hazeh, even to this day. Shiva. So he says al shem habrit. The word shiva doesn't mean, sorry, I said 7, but here it doesn't mean that. It means regarding the covenant that they had made. So we've had other explanations of the word Beersheba, but we have different reasons for it being named what it's named. Vahi Esav, so now we go on to a new idea, new thought. Vahi Esav ben Arba'im Shana, Esau turned 40 years old. Vayikach Isha et Yehudit, and at that point he took a wife, Yehudit, Judith, Bat Be'eri Hachiti, the daughter of Be'eri Hachiti, the daughter of Be'eri the Hittite, Ve'et Bosmat Bat Elon Hachiti, and Bosmat, the daughter of Elon Hachiti, the Hittite. Vatiena, let's see, we got a Rashi on this. Let me just do a little bit more, one more verse to get to the end of the chapter, and then we'll dive into the Rashi. Vatiena morot ruach, and they were, now Rashi is not going to translate this as mar, but he's going to translate it as from Mary, meaning rebellious, right? But the point is they caused a sense of, how can I put it? It's, something to the effect of that they disturbed the peace, right? The spirit.
It says vexation here.
I know it's the best way to go. They were a cause
yeah.
of vexation, right?
It's like Isaac was annoyed, I guess.
Well, more than annoyed. I think morat ruach means, I mean, I don't mind the translation, bitterness of spirit. I think it describes it very well, but that's not the way Rashi, he's not taking it from the word mar.
Okay. I have a source of bitterness.
Yeah, I know. It's not the way Rashi goes on this.
I know. With a bitter,
well,
wind.
It says more in the actual Rashi part.
Yeah, let's hold off on that for a moment.
We're almost there.
We are almost there. The Yitzchak or the Rivka to Isaac and Rivka. So again, going to the Targum is like our earliest source on this, right? And it's here he goes, Misarvan. Misarvan means.
So are we going to do the other Rashi, or you wanted to do this one first?
I'll do this first. This isn't the
Okay.
Rashi. I'm just looking at the Targum here, okay, because of what we said here, okay. Misarvan, misarev means like they would always disagree, right? If Rebecca said left, they'd say right. If Rebecca said let's bake it at 400, they'd say no, we want to bake it at 300.
Contrary.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Umiragzan, that's causing vexation. Al Meimar Yitzchak v'Rivka, regarding everything that Rivka and Isaac and Rivka would say. So they were, this was not exactly a happy home. Take a look at this. So we said that Esau was ben arba'im shana. He was 40 years old. Well, isn't that interesting? How old was Isaac when he married Rebekah? He was 40 years old. And that's the point he's going to make. So we need to understand that the tradition finds any excuse to show that Esau is not a nice guy, even though the text itself isn't clear about that. And in fact, this Rashi is going to explain why the text isn't so clear about it. Esav haya nimshal l'chazir. Esau was compared to a pig. Shine'emar, as it states in Tilim Pei, that is in Psalm 80, Yechar samena chazir miyar, that the pig ravages it, the pig of the forest ravages it. And the word keres, as I pointed out, Yechar samena, has to do with the stomach. Keres is your stomach. So, in other words, this may be referring to the enemies and the people who destroyed Jerusalem, etc., just how they ravaged it, the city. And he says, "Hachazir hazeh, this pig, keshehu shochev, when he lies down, poshet tlafav, he stretches out his hoofs, whatever you want to call it, right? I don't know what we had referred to the pigs, but it's his legs. But here it's referring to the ends of his legs, his hoofs. Lomar, as if to say, Re'u sha'ani tahor. Look, I'm pure, because his hoof, the hoof of a pig, is cloven, right? So the pig stretches out its hoofs, shows its cloven hoofs, and says, "Hey, I'm pure. I'm kach elu gozlim v'chomasim," and such can be compared to the people who are robbers and marauders. People who do violence. Umarim atzmam kasherim, and they try to show themselves as decent, regular human beings. Kol mem shana, and he goes on to say, for the entire 40 years, up until he actually got married, Haya Esav tzad nashim, he would hunt women, mitachad yad ba'alehem. In other words, he would commit adultery, right, from under the control of their husbands. So basically, Esau went around committing adultery, uma'ane otam, and he would rape them. Keshehaya ben mem, but when he turned 40, Amar, he thought, Abba ben mem shana nasa isha, Daddy was 40 years when he married a woman, af anichain, I too will behave, I'll do the same thing. So this is how, from a literary point of view, our tradition looks at the character of Esau. And of course, it's so interesting. Esau and Jacob, don't forget, are twins. And I wonder if Esau in some way represents, the antimatter, you might say, of Jacob. I wonder, just a thought. So rather than sort of standing outside and just criticizing Esau, saying, we need to be more careful about this. And that's not to say that Esau doesn't deserve, the criticism that we're leveling at least the character. Morat Ruach. So here we are, this Morat Ruach. And he says, Lashon Hamra'at Ruach, right? What this means is it's trying to express rebelling against the spirit. And there's an example in Deuteronomy 9, Mamrim Heitam. So go ahead, please.
Sorry. Could you also say that Esav represented Yetzer Hara?
Yes, you could. I know that, sort of there was a time when Esau represented Rome. That's a very strong connection there with the bitterness and the anger and the hurt that the Jewish people felt when Rome, because if you know the history of how Rome got involved in that part of the world, they were actually invited in to begin with, and then subsequently, of course, destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. And of course, that particular exile had lasted like close to 2,000 years. So you can understand the hurt and the anger labeled against Rome, and finding Esau to be a perfect illustration of those kinds of attitudes. And I mean, I'm not saying that there wasn't a lot of hypocrisy involved, which is, of course, the way we're describing Esau in terms of their behavior. Anyway, going on with the new idea, right? Mamrim heitem, you acted as rebels.
Honestly, you have a fucking problem if you tell me to shut up for your thing you listen to every day.
Excuse me. I'm sorry?
I'm very sorry. I'm having a conversation at the same time that isn't going well. Thank you.
Okay. 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 All right. Sorry about that. Okay. There we go. So let's find where we are, right? Okay. We were talking about a sign of Mamrim Heitim. Kol Ma'asehim, right. So Mamrim Heitim, he's quoting Deuteronomy. Kol Ma'asehim, all the deeds of these women that Esau married, Hayu lahachis ulaitzavon. They always were acting to anger, right? To anger and to create distress. LiYitzchak ulerivcha. So to both Isaac and to Jacob, both to Isaac and to Rebekah, Shahayu uvdot avodat elimim, because they would worship idols. They worshipped idols.
It's interesting that they're the name Yehudit.
Yes, I know.
One of them is named Yehudit.
I know. And
which of course is an extremely popular name through the years. And then Basmat has become a popular name in Israel in recent years.
I know it is, because it has the idea of bosem, right? Spices, or incense or something like that. I know it is interesting. Of course, I don't know if there's another Bosmat somewhere else that is in a lovely way. We also, of course, have Judith, and this is, I believe, in the Apocrypha, that there's a story of Judith, who's very brave woman, and who represents, courage on the part of women in expressing their Judaism. So it is interesting. And this is probably a good place for us to stop. We are now into the story here where Jacob tricks Esau out of his blessing. So we're going to stop here, and with God's help, next year we will pick it up and do this part of the story as we move on with the Parsha. There's definitely, there's so much pathos in all of this, and drama, and pain, and it represents life. There's a lot of dramatic irony in what we're reading. And I'm going to stop the share for now. Yeah. All right. Are there any comments before I stop the recording? Okay.
I was reminded of my teacher, Aviva Zornberg.
Yes.
Now, I can't remember if I learned this from her, but it's certainly in the spirit of her teaching when Yitzchak says, "Why are you coming to me? You hate me."
Yeah. Yes.
She likes to look at the psychological side of things. And when you say to someone, "You hate me," there's an element of, in that, a problem, sometimes unconscious, of "I hate you." And
Definitely.
it occurred to me that might be an interesting way to think about Yitzchak.
Yes.
especially in light of his early trauma that he went through. Sorry.
So
Yeah.
we
that's
have a minion now, and I do have to go as soon as possible. So if you don't mind, you could and if you want to stop the
I will stop the recording.
share, and we'll do a Kaddish D'Rabbanan before I go.
Okay.
And I did check Basmath. She was a daughter of Solomon also
Aha. Interesting.
later, much later.
Good. Okay. Let me stop this.